chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gaetz.
Good to see you again, Mr. Inspector General. We appreciate you and all the great members of your team, and I want you to know we do read your reports. Just yesterday, I was questioning the ATF director about why they weren't following some of the recommendations you put forward, and know that that work is appreciated. I also take note of our distinguished ranking members' call for this FISA reform to be bipartisan and to be nonpartisan, which at times are two different things. And I think it is thoughtful and mature, and I will do all I can to resist the temptation to frequently point out that the very political weaponization that Ms. Williams testified about is often directed against Republicans. But based on the ranking member's solemn and I think thoughtful advice, we'll try to avoid seizing on that point as frequently as we might otherwise. I want to get into the 3.4 million backdoor searches that the ranking member pointed out in his opening statement. Mr. Inspector General, how should the public think about those?
Well, I think what we've seen in the various public reports, and I'm limited in what I can say about what's public, which I think is one of the issues, by the way, that's worth talking about, is transparency here. It's obviously very concerning that there's that volume of searches, and particularly concerning the error rate that was reported on in the last 2 years in the public reporting. Now,
and that error rate was what?
I believe it was around 30%. I think, fellow members, I think it's around 30%.
Well, 30%. I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician, but 3.4 million, about 30%. You're talking about 7 figures of error in terms of these searches. I'm wondering how many people can perform these backdoor queries?
I'm going to defer to board members because you have the review ongoing.
I'm afraid I don't have those figures at my fingertips in terms of the number of people that can conduct those types of searches. But I share the concern expressed in the question that we need to have greater safeguards, and I urge Congress to incorporate a requirement for FISA court review of these kinds of searches to protect Americans' Fourth Amendment rights.
3.4 million backdoor searches, more than 1 million of them in error. If I represent to you that we believe there may be north of 10,000 people in the federal government that can perform those queries, would anyone here have a basis to disagree with that assessment?
No.
So FISA is unique in our jurisprudence because it's not an adversarial process. Most of us think about justice where there's a lawyer on one side, a lawyer on the other, and then a judge or a jury makes the decision. But here in FISA, you've got just one team and the referee, and you don't have a defense attorney or an advocate there to point out these things. Given that FISA isn't adversarial, how does that increase the importance of the Department of Justice taking the recommendations of the Inspector General as you've laid out over the years?
Congressman, I think it's critical, and you're exactly right. It was one of the concerns we saw in the Title I work we did on the Carter Page FISAs, which is, to some extent, the FISC is relying entirely on what the government tells it. So in some respects, it's unfair to look to the FISC to try and do the kind of work that, as you noted, a defense lawyer would do. I was a federal prosecutor. I was a defense lawyer as well. There's a search for the truth.
I'm a little annoyed they don't hold the federal prosecutors in contempt who come before them and don't present complete evidence.
I'll just say on the Carter Page FISAs, one of the problems that we found, and one of the serious problems we found, was the FBI was sitting on information and wasn't telling the prosecutors that information.
If I was in a civil litigation environment in North Florida and I was withholding evidence that the other side had a right to, I would expect a judge to sanction me. I know you don't oversee the court, but perhaps a message that they would absorb. And speaking of messages to absorb, we have this non-adversarial process. We have these 3.4 million backdoor queries, more than 1 million of them in error, and it just doesn't seem like DOJ is listening and they're as quick on the uptake as they should be. In 2019, you write a 478-page report detailing the problems. In 2020, you publish a management advisory that lays out the problems. In 2021, you lay out additional reforms, and it seems as though every time you write a report, and then the DOJ comes in and tells us that they now have fixed everything and have seen the light, and then you write another report showing that there hasn't been sufficient compliance. I know there's a report coming after this hearing, but I think that just continues the cycle until we constrain these authorities.